Welcome. This body tarot reading is for the week of March 20th, for the beginning of the Astrological New Year, for the first week and the first day of Aries season. I am so excited for spring. I cannot even tell you. I'm so excited for that renewing energy. It's a beautiful day today, and I am very grateful that spring is here. It's around the corner. Today, I was originally going to do a reading just for myself, but share it with you all and get into some real nitty-gritty specifics of how I go about a body tarot reading for myself and how specific I get with what I take from that reading. And then it occurred to me that because I'm planning on sharing it with you through this video, that it really is going to be sort of a collective reading. And you will hopefully get something out of it yourself. So it's for me, it's for you. This is our body tarot reading for the week of March 20th, 2023. I've already shuffled up my cards here. I am using a pretty old school, traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck for my primary draws. And then I'm also using an oracle deck, the Supra Oracle by Usi Design Studio, that is influenced and inspired by Carl Jung, among other things. So, if you're new here, I'm going to pull a card for various areas pertaining to the body and our physical activity. The first position is movement. The second position is rest. The third position is nourishment. The fourth position is play. I'm going to pull a primary card and then a secondary card for each one, and we'll go through each position and explore and see what comes up. All right, bear with me. Am I on camera still? Kind of. Okay, I have my cards on the floor down here. I like to read on the floor. Okay. I know the suspense is killing you. I like to do this. I like to do it live, baby. All right, you ready for this? I'm gonna flip the camera around. Sorry, the lens is a little foggy. In movement, we have the Eight of Swords. We have sageness. Over here in rest, we have balance, or we have the Two of Pentacles when he is balancing. The Animus. Over here in nourishment, nutrition, consumption, and the Queen of Wands. And imperfection. And then up here in play, we have fire and the Knight of Cups. Look at him go. All right, so let's go through each of these one at a time. I'm already giggling to myself because one, I don't know if you follow Everyday Magic, who is a wonderful store and platform run by Cara and some other lovely people. Autumn Whitehurst, who also, she and Cara co-designed one of my favorite decks that I use. She posted the Eight of Swords today on their main feed with a little discussion about it. So I'm just chuckling because of that little synchronicity there. As well as the Animus showing up because I've been deep diving on Jungian psychology and astrology. We'll get to that in a second. All right. So, first up, in movement, this is interesting. Because here we have someone who's totally immobilized. And one of the, I would say, broad and accurate interpretations of this card is the immobilization, the paralysis that comes from overthinking and from your thoughts and how you're looking at things being the limitation that is holding you back from movement. And my clarifier solution card, shall we say here, is Sageness. And I love this card because it's specifically imagined as nature. And the way that I feel this out here is this is the wisdom of the body the wisdom of the deep self in response to nature, the wisdom of nature itself. That nature and the body are far more brilliant and complex than our conscious thinking, ego, narrative mind can ever be. The amount of things that your body does per second to keep you alive and healthy is unfathomable. And if you had to be put in charge of consciously doing all those things, you'd keel over instantly. It is, the wisdom of the body is infinite. It is unbelievably powerful. And it's almost too bad that we can't be a little more conscious of it, because I think we would be so astonished and so in awe of our own bodies if we could just get like a little more awareness of how amazing and wise this thing is. Maybe we'd worry a little bit less. Maybe we'd trust our bodies a little bit more. So I'm taking this, so I'll go into sort of my specifics of like how I would interpret this into what does this mean for movement in my week? What does this mean for how I'm going to be physically expressing my body? Well, number one, I'm going to take all of the thinking out of my routine as much as possible. So my movement routine is mostly weightlifting informed, both Olympic style weightlifting, the sport, movements from it, and lifting weights in the gym. Those are that is the current context that my focused movement time exists within. It can be anything, you know, it could be your yoga, walking, martial arts, any number of things. For me, it is lifting weights. And going for long, meandering walks in the park, connecting to nature. That's actually something that I'm thinking of now because it's around springtime where I tend to do that more and more. And I live by a really big, beautiful park here in the city. So I'm looking at this as the opportunity to take as much worrying out of training as possible, of deciding what I'm going to do beforehand, in a way that is in accordance. I already have some sort of goals and plans that are roughly informing when I lift, how I lift, what movements I do. So I'm just going to stick to that and just do it and not think about it. And I know that's kind of like, that's the sort of like catch-22 of like, well, how do you not think about, we're so stuck in mind all the time, right? It's so easy to be, this is an analytical, intellectual sort of game right now of interpreting meaning and trying to think of what that means. So this is about dropping that story. There is no story. There's just your body and what it's doing in the moment. And you get to choose if the physical things that you are doing feed into a story of constriction and worry, or feed into a story of strength, empowerment, taking care of myself. So if you do notice that you're getting overthinking, well, one, you can remind yourself that it's not that important. Not every minute detail actually matters that much in the long term. What matters is that you're creating a nurturing self-experience for your body in your movement practice. And any added stress about is it the right thing to do is really not helpful. And if that is hard to get out of, you can just simplify. The wisdom of simplicity. Simplify as much as possible. Drop the complicated routine. Just go for a walk. So that's kind of the wisdom that I'm going to be taking into this week in my movement. It's not that deep. Don't think about it too hard. Your body knows more than you do. When in doubt, return to nature, be outside, go for a walk, touch grass, right? All right. Next up, got your boys. This jolly fellow, the juggler, the Two of Pentacles. And Pentacles is, the suit of earth and the physical body and movement within the physical body. And then we have the Animus. And the Animus, if you're not, I am not by any means an expert on Jungian psychology, but I think there's more of a general awareness and understanding of this, what this means, the sort of idealized masculine yang energy form, and how when we're striving to create balance, there needs to be harmony between inner and outer, between structure and formlessness. And you could think of it as yang, if we're thinking, of gender, the gender principle as more the spiritual hermetic approach to gender. as these two broad spiritual principles that carry meaning, and that the animus is an expression of this broad spiritual principle of fire, of output, of action, of structure. I like yin yang for this as well. So within balancing, to find what we should be doing. Let me backtrack for a second. This is in rest specifically. So we are now talking about what our approach to rest and restoration, and that can be literally sleep down, and it can be the downtime for our minds, the downtime for our bodies. Rest is not just the hours that you are unconscious. And if rest is only the hours that you are unconscious, speaking from personal experience, you're probably not very well rested. If all of your waking hours, you're constantly in input out, you're constantly in ingesting stimuli, or you're constantly outputting, you may find that you're pretty ragged, you're pretty burnt out. This is something that I have had a lot of challenge with in the past, is being able to sort of turn off my mind a little bit and get out of this and get into a more relaxed state when I don't have to be in a worked up state. So there's a kind of being able to recognize in yourself, like, what is the point in your day when you really stop being productive, when you really are no longer able to output in the things that you want to be outputting in, or in the things that you have to be outputting in, your job, your responsibilities. And if you can recognize, let's say that's 7 p.m. After 7 p.m., you're really not getting anything done. But your pattern and your reflex is to continue to try to get things done. Okay, how do we look at that in terms of establishing new boundaries and establishing a new dynamic for honoring the importance of rest and downtime, and how it takes time to transition your body and your nervous system from output, go, daylight, to rest and restore, evening, nighttime. And you have your natural cues of the natural world, evening hours, so looking at the sunset, whatever, your external reflections, the external world of the cues that we can sort of input of, okay, I don't respond to emails after 7 p.m. What I'm getting at is, to create this balance, you have to establish boundaries with yourself and with other people. And this, I think, is why animus is showing up here, because the ideal archetype of action and structure and form is here to protect and guard our energetic boundaries. So you can think to yourself, whether you need to put a reminder on your phone to not do certain things after a certain time, or, use those timer apps to tell you when you've been scrolling too long, to tell, your close intimates, hey guys, after this time, I really want to not engage with talking about the news or work or whatever it is. This reflection, the animus is basically here to be okay, after this, no. And I think when we can sort of appreciate, when we can really take to heart how critical our own well-being and rest is, you are going to have a slightly easier time understanding that putting boundaries around it is critical. So I'm going to continue to get specific with an example here for what I'm going to be doing, is continuing what I started last week, and I had some success with it. I had sort of put the idea in my head of okay, after, I think it was 7:30 or 8, no phone. Do not be on your phone at all. Text somebody back, check periodically if I'm expecting a text. But no social, no scrolling, no typing in my notes, no email, no Spotify even, just no, nothing. And I had, and putting that sort of thought in my mind, like that it did help guide. I didn't stick to it totally, but it helped. And I felt like I was starting to reclaim the hours preceding sleep as a time of deeper relaxation. And I was naturally finding other things to do to relax and to get myself ready for sleep and to just enjoy that time, which for me is also a very specific sort of state of consciousness that is very creative. It's very generative. It's a good time for me to read about, you know, the topics that I'm studying and I'm interested in. So creating boundaries around our rest and using whatever structures we have to reinforce them. Boom. Right? I'm liking this so far for this first week of the new year. So, next. Talk about nourishment, talking about consumption. We have the Queen of Wands. Take a good gander. And we have imperfection. Imperfection. So, I love this card. When Wands comes up in nourishment, I think it has more to do with how we are emotionally, not even emotionally, creatively nourishing ourselves. And there can be a literal dimension to that, which is like hyper creativity of what I'm literally eating. So I think you can interpret this as like, can I make eating more fun? And even if I'm not a good cook and like don't know how to do it very well, can I just like make eating a little more fun? Am I stuck in a pattern of like defaults and shoulds and counting calories and macros and not whatever strategy you're doing that you're in love with is great. I'm not here to knock any particular strategy. But as you can probably tell from my initial expression there, I am not a fan of tracking really anything. It just does not excite me. It doesn't turn me on. I don't like it. I like to be creative. I like to be creative, and I had a lot of fear. Maybe fear. Like I also don't like to feel stupid and like I don't know how to do things, which kind of gets in the way of learning a lot of the time. But I've recently started pushing the boundaries a little bit in the kitchen, and that just means actually trying like new recipes. And you know what's been really shocking is how the very simple basic activity of trying a new recipe like blew my own mind. I was like, oh my god, I can just make meals creatively and like try different things. And because I'm such also a creature of like, if I find something that works, I'm gonna do it forever. So I will get very boring and very methodical and repetitive with how I do things a lot of the time. But there's a part of me that does crave creativity and innovation, and especially if the thing that I'm doing is no longer nourishing me in the way that it needs to, and it's getting stale, then it's like I need to bring creativity into it. So I think when it comes to how we're feeding ourselves this week, enjoying this new burst of spring energy and getting literally creative with how we eat, make something new, try a new recipe, try a new restaurant, something that excites you and makes you feel sexy and fun. And that may not be intuitive, like eating doesn't make me feel sexy. Eating good, delicious food that I prepared creatively and like didn't mess up does make me feel sexy. Feeling sexy is not just about literal sexual arousal and like sex. It's a whole thing. It's a whole dimension of our creative fire. So thinking about like what food, now I'm just like, I know this maybe sounds really, really silly, but we're here thinking about what food, what way of approaching nourishing yourself could feel sexy. Maybe eating your food with your bare hands. I don't know. Be creative. Try something new, god damn it. It does not have to be perfect. Like, it really doesn't. This is not what I thought I was gonna say, but I'm feeling it. I think the first thought that popped in my head was like, oh, this is about creative, like, nourishment of your soul and like art. And you know, that can really feed into how we physically engage and relax ourselves when we're reading, watching, hearing new art and things that inspire us. That's really great. But this is body tarot, baby. I want to keep this as practical as possible. And if you've had your eye on that recipe, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. Okay, we're almost there. Knight of Cups and fire. This is an interesting combination because we have two sort of seeming opposites here at play. And this is the category of this spread that is I would say this is the category of play and recreation. And I do mean that in the sense of physical activity. Doesn't need not sport necessarily, but things that get you moving and grooving. Things that are fun and stimulating, that have to do with how you engage with yourself or others physically. And honestly, I gotta take a second with this one because the Knight of Cups is this sort of, he's a little melancholy. He's a little bit of a sad boy. He's a little melancholic and broody. But we got fire here to perk him up a little bit. So I just had this thought of like, what if somebody invites me horseback riding this week? Like, that would be amazing. So keep your eye out for horses, I guess. But the knights in general also always to me speak to a little bit the call to adventure and the call to try things, and that sometimes trying new things is emotionally vulnerable, but then when you get into the activity, it ends up lighting you up in a way that you could not have expected because it's not something that you would have chosen by yourself. So I'm getting the vibe of, I think we're in cups here because this is asking us to be really available, like emotionally, because our emotions dictate so much of what we do and so much of how we make our decisions. And our rational narrative mind will just sort of justify and make up a story about why we did that thing after the fact. But so much of the time it was our deep emotions guiding these things. And so sometimes we don't do things that we want to try because we're afraid, or we have some vulnerability, or just maybe something that's living within us that isn't entirely sure it's safe to come out and play. But it's fire season, baby. It doesn't matter if we feel ready or not. Maybe we're still feeling that like Pisces, last couple days of Pisces sort of emotionality and lethargy, but fire is here. It's here. And there are new opportunities popping up all of the time. All of the time. And it's going to find you one way or another. So you don't need to feel, and I don't need to feel like you have to exhaust yourself. Like play should be fun. So if you're finding yourself being like, well, in order to be balanced and healthy, I need to make sure that I'm having fun, and then having fun becomes another thing on your to-do list to stress over. No. That ain't the way. So fun to me is sort of like desire or arousal. It's like you want to create the conditions that allow fun to happen. You can't force fun. So this speaks to the importance of putting putting yourself out there for fun and not needing to know and be totally certain and emotionally secure in what that fun is going to look like. But it is important to put yourself out there. And if you already have an idea of what that is for you, I think we're getting sort of a broad thing here, because like this is so unique to the, like what's fun for you is not necessarily what's fun for me, or like there's just duh. But what is really universal is that openness and an open heart and an open hand are the necessary conditions for things to meet us and for things to find us. So if you're feeling like, all right, it's time, I'm starting to crave a little fun, you don't need to know exactly what that looks like, whether that's somebody inviting you out dancing or a board game night, something social, or you taking yourself on a little mini adventure on like the, you know, on the weekend, let me go upstate for the day, what, like go out of town for the day, whatever it is. Just being open to it and putting yourself out there to it a little bit will immediately invite in that spark. And then you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. This is a good one, guys. I'm just like feeling pretty happy. We don't have any major arcana. But we have some, I think, really clear messages here about what is going to serve us this week. I am going to pull one more pair, and this is going to be just our general direction for the week. Oh, gorgeous. Okay. This is interesting. I seldom pull this card for myself, which is kind of cool to see it here. The 8 of Cups. And do you believe in magic? So, we're leaving Pisces season, y'all. We're leaving the old year. We're leaving it. That's not to say some patterns and some emotions and some things might not trail along a little bit, but we are out of here. Starting tomorrow, it is a new year. It is spring. It is the equinox. It is time to let go of emotional attachments to anything and everything that was weighing us down. I know that's like such a broad, I feel like I hear that all the time in like new age and spiritual chats and like, let it go, let it go. But truly the art of letting go, the art of releasing, the art of loving detachment is a skill. It is a skill and an art. And we're constantly being given these big sort of macro opportunities with the seasons to shift through our awareness of what it means to let go and to change. And so, you know, when it comes to the story of our bodies and the story that we tell ourselves about how our body works and what it's doing for us, some of those stories don't need to keep coming with us. You know, if you had a story about I'm unathletic, I'm sick, I'm always struggling to make positive changes, I always struggle with food, like there obviously may have been a very real, palpable dimension to that story, but when you admit the story component of it and you lovingly release it, that gives you the opportunity to start to use your imagination and maybe literally magic, if that's your methodology, to start to come up with new stories, with new opportunities. And I think that's very important it's important for me. I always need this reminder. We are so much under the influence of our own stories, our unconscious stories in particular, and those are things that sometimes take many years and maybe even lifetimes, who knows, to rewrite or to understand. And so I see this as a very positive sort of symbol for this week, for Monday. Let it go. We're moving on. It's a new year, baby. All right, have an amazing, amazing week.